Hey there guys, Raymond here, also known as Rayvision, and I am back at it again with another top 10 list. Today we are going to be counting down the top 10 stock drift cars in Forza Horizon 3. Now before we get started, I just want to take the time to address the last top 10 list I make, which was the top 10 fastest cars in Forza Horizon 3. Now unfortunately, I did forget a few cars. I'm not perfect and I'll be the first to admit that, but a very few people posted what cars they would like to see on this list, the top 10 stock drift cars, because they were too busy pointing out the cars that I missed, which is fine. But I just want to point out that if you're complaining on this list that I didn't feature a certain car, but you never asked this car to be featured on the list in the previous video, then how am I to blame? You never brought up your opinion, and how can I be aware of your opinion in that situation? I'm just trying to create a bit of an understanding, because or else everyone's going to get mad at me, and it's not like I can read your minds. No offense, guys. I'm not that amazing. Not that I'm amazing, period. So, with that being in mind, we're going to start top 10 stock drift cars. Let's get into it. At number 10, we have a viewer-requested car, which is the Subaru BRZ, also known as the Toyota GT350R, or you could also think of it as the Scion FRS. Whatever this being, this is a fun little car. The simple point being, it doesn't have a lot of power. What it does have is the skinniest little tiny Prius tires in the world, which means that when you go into a turn way too fast and you tap the e-brake, you're going to be coming out sideways, no matter what that happens. The reason why it's so low on this list is while it was recommended by a viewer, I don't really think it is that great of a drift car. And before you get mad, just hear me out. Stock, yes, you can do some stuff around certain tight corners, but you can't do anything around the long corners, and it's really hard to maintain and or control the drifts that you do get out of it. That's my opinion of it. If you disagree, let me know. Now at number 9, we have something that anyone who's a fan of me knows would probably be on this list, and that is the Toyota AE86, the Tirreno, and it is an absolute beast. And by beast, I mean it's better than the BRZ in my opinion, and you may disagree with me, that's completely fine. But in my opinion, it is a slightly better drifter. It is very light, it only has 128 horsepower, but it is slightly easier to get to go around that corner and to maintain the drift. It is able to maintain drifts a bit more than the GT86 or the BRZ, and that's what lands it at our number 9 spot on this list. In the 8th position on this list, we find the Toyota Supra. It could have been an RX-7, it could have been an MX-5, but people asked me to do the Supra, and no one asked for any of the other two, so I decided, well, the Supra deserves a spot on this list. And you know what? It's not that bad. More stable than the AE86, easier to drift than the BRZ. It is the best of both worlds that those cars represented. So in other words, it's just a better drift car to go around corners in. And you want to know what? It's a Supra. It's cool to look at. I don't see the problem taking that thing out for a rip, do you? No, that's what I thought. Now in 7th place, we have a viewer recommendation, and that is the Ford GT350R. And this thing, well, is basically a Mustang, let's be honest. Let's not lie to each other. And surprisingly, it's not the best at drifting. My expectations were set way up high, and it disappointed. And the reason for that is you stick it in second gear and you can hold the drift, but then halfway through the turn, the car wants to grip. And so it makes it a bit of a challenge to get it out there. It has the power, it has the traction, and it has the stability, but it really just wants to grip for some reason. And for me, that doesn't make sense, because it's an American muscle car with rear-wheel drive. Why doesn't it want to drift in the corners? All you'd have to do is press on the gas, but it doesn't work. And that's what limits it to number 7 on this list. Now, at number 6 on the list, we have something that I don't think a lot of people might expect. At least I wasn't expecting it, because the idea was given to me by my mother, who was like, well, what about Lexus? And so we have the Lexus LFA. And let's just be honest, the LFA has a high RPM revving engine, it has quite a bit of power, and it is rear-wheel drive. Now, this doesn't mean it's easy to drift. It's actually surprisingly weird how this thing works. It's hard to find the balance with this car. You can get a good drift going, but it's really easy to spin out, even though sometimes you just can't get the drift going. So it's really you have to find that balance on the edge to be able to get this car going sideways, and that is what lands it in 6th position. say hello to number 5 on the list, which was actually one of my picks because, let's be honest, I love this car too much. At number 5, it's the Corvette, the good old American, well, I want to say good old American, but it's just the Corvette, let's be honest. And for this, you could either take the C7, which is what I took here, or the C6. I think both of these are equally eligible for this position, and they're both just such a fun car. I mean, like, it's a Corvette. You guys know I love the Corvette so much, and them not being on this list to me would not have made sense because they're light, they have a lot of power in the back, and they can go sideways and make lots of smoke, which to me is, it must be on this list somewhere. Now, at number 4, we have the most requested car by viewers, and the only reason why it's not higher on the list is I just drifted other cars that felt more natural and easier to drift, but I completely agree with this choice, and that is the C63 AMG, because this thing is just, well, just beast, and it doesn't even have to be the AMG, just C63s in general are amazing drift cars. Rear-wheel drive, and they have a bunch of power to throw around. And I'm pretty sure that when everyone thinks of a car drifting, they can picture Jeremy Clarkson going sideways during that C63 review. Because I know I can, and that's why it landed number 4 on this list. Now at number 3, we have another Mercedes rising up to challenge, and that is the Mercedes SLS. First off, this car sounds amazing. Second off, it is a German-American muscle car. I mean, how could you describe this? Because it's essentially a muscle car, but it's German. And it's absolutely brilliant because it has a lot of power and it manages it extremely well going around corners. It feels extremely natural just taking the Mercedes SLS, pop in second gear. Sometimes it can even pull off third and just go out for a drift, and it's just a nice car to go cornering with. I don't know about you guys, but this is definitely deserving of the 3rd spot on this list. At number 2, well, we have something that a lot of people have been waiting for, at least I'd like to think a lot of people have, and that is the BMW M4. If I'm honest, pretty much any of the BMWs could have made it on this list, because the M2, the M5 are all great drifters in this game. At least that's my personal opinion. But the M4 is the one that stands out the most. Being not too heavy and having a fair amount of power, it is extremely easy and smooth to control through the corners. Especially when you're going through a city and you want to do those tight corners, this thing just feels natural. In fact, I could keep doing donuts around the same spot non-stop with like incredible control of this car, which is not something I can usually do, which is why this car is deserving of the 2nd spot. Now, number 1, we probably have a car or cars that are going to get me a lot of hate. But guys, if you didn't recommend a car in the last top 10 list, I don't really feel like you're in a position to argue this one. And the simple answer is the Hellcats. Not just a Challenger, not just a Charger, but both of them. Why? Because they have an absurd amount of rear-wheel drive power, and they like to go sideways. I mean, like, these are the 2 cars, because here's the thing. When drifting stock cars, depending on what car you're drifting, you really have to push it to the limit if you want to do the stretchier corners. These are the only cars on this list that I was able to put into 3rd gear and hold a steady drift around a longer sweeping corner, and just to keep and not struggle to keep it sideways, not have to fight it. These felt just natural, and I feel like everyone can agree on that. Alright guys, that will be it for this week's top 10 list. Now be sure to let me know in the comments below if you disagreed with some of the cars on this list, and if so, what cars you would have chosen as well. Leave me some recommendations for next week's top 10 list, which is the top 10 fastest drag cars, as well as their times if possible in the comments below. Simply put, if you don't offer me a recommendation for next week's top 10 list, then you're not allowed to complain. I'll just put that rule right there. I feel like it's fair. As usual, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. These lists take me a lot of time to make, so if you guys could subscribe, like, follow me on Instagram and Twitter, I would really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next one. Goodbye, everyone!